Good evening, Brian. It's Thursday, and that means it's time for a Thursday Top 5. So as you know, I have been reading more and more lately, and so I figured that that would be something that I would talk about today in my Thursday Top 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about my top 5 favorite short stories that are in Night Shift. Now, Night Shift is Stephen King's first published collection of short stories. He's known for his horror novels, such as The Shining and Carrie and things, but he's actually also published probably 4 or 5 collections of short stories, especially if you count the books he has that are more collections of novellas instead of just short stories. But this is the first one he published. A lot of these, I believe, were written or initially published in magazines before his first published book. So a lot of this is really early Stephen King work. And that sort of shows through in some of the ways the stories go. You can definitely tell that some of them have rough patches, that you can tell that it's some of his first efforts, just because there's some, rough edges and things like that. But I really like them. Some of them are a little bit less polished, if that makes sense. And while that sort of can be perceived as a negative, I think it's actually kind of a positive sometimes, because you really get to see, like, some of them are a little more wild than they would be otherwise, some of them are a little bit more out there than they would be otherwise. So I think this is probably one of his better collections of short stories, actually. It's a lot of fun, it's great, and there's some really good ones in here. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first one I want to talk about is called One for the Road. This is in the Jerusalem's Lot or Salem's Lot universe. Salem's Lot was his second book, I believe. And I'm sure you've heard about it. It's generally a story about vampires. I'm not going to go too much into it because spoilers, but it's one of his better stories. It's one of his more famous novels. And One for the Road is a short story that's set in that same universe, but it's really good. It's probably one of the scarier ones out of this collection. It does a really good job of building that foreboding environment and that sense of world and place, and you really feel like you're in the story, and it's really, really good. It's just solidly scary. It's very well written. It's very well done. So that's definitely a good one. The next one I'll talk about is called The Boogeyman. I love this one. It's very short. It's a little bit silly and a little bit predictable, but I just think it's really solid. I think it's short. It doesn't really waste time meandering. It sort of gets right to the point. It's brief. It's a nice little nugget of scariness. It's a really good one, so I would recommend that to anyone looking to read Stephen King short stories. The next one I'll talk about is called Strawberry Spring. This is another one that has a twist, similar to some of the other ones that I will talk about in this vlog, but it's just really, really good. It does a really great job of sort of making you feel like you were in a time a long time ago, not too long ago, but a while ago. It does really good at building that tone and sort of being like a period piece. It makes you feel like you're back then. It just does a really good job of establishing that setting and that environment and everything. And it's really, it's just a fun story to read. It's got a twist sort of involved in it, which is also fun. And it sort of plays with your expectations a little bit, and you think the story's going one way, but then it goes a totally different way. So it's really, really good. The next one I want to talk about is called The Last Rung on the Ladder. Now, this is actually not a scary story. It is a story about a brother and his recollections of time growing up and playing with his sister when they were younger as well. But it really shows that not only is Stephen King really good at writing scary or horror things, but he's also really good at writing dramatic things and really pulling on those heartstrings and really making you feel for characters and establish that kind of character development and relationship that's required to make you really feel for these characters. He's written things like The Shawshank Redemption and The Body, which are both non-scary things that he's done that are really well acclaimed and popular. And this sort of shows that even way back when he was first getting started, he was sort of flexing those muscles and not just doing, genre fiction, horror stuff, but was actually playing with more serious, dramatic things too. So I just think it's really, really well done. It definitely hits you right in the feels. It's a really just moving story, and so it's a lot of fun. And the last one I want to talk about is called The Man Who Loved Flowers. This is again, like a lot of the ones that I seem to like in this, it does a really good job of establishing the setting and the place, and you feel like you're there. And the way he writes it, it's set in like an urban setting in years past, and you really get a feel for being there. You can sort of see what that street and that block looked like. You can imagine how the people that are being described that he's walking by on the street look and how they react and what they sound like. And it just does a really good job of really transporting you to a place. Sometimes when you read a book, there's less of that setting development, and it's more just here's the narrative, plot points, A, B, C, D, and you get strung along, and it's fine, and it's enjoyable, and you're in there for the story. But other times, things take a little bit longer to sort of establish the environment and the background and the setting. And I find that really, really fun to read sometimes. And The Mantle of Flowers does a really good job of that. It's another very brief one. It gets right to the point. It doesn't really meander. It doesn't really waste time. It's pretty succinct, but it's a fun story. You feel like you were in a place that you were not, and it also, like another one that I mentioned earlier, has sort of a surprise or a difference involved than what you would expect. So it's just a really solid one. So those are the 5 short stories that I think, at least at this moment, and based on my last reading a couple weeks ago, are my favorites from this collection. But they're all really good. Again, I think this, I haven't read some of his other collections in a good while, but I would definitely, at least right now, rank this as probably my favorite of his short story collections. So if you're looking to get started with Stephen King, this would be a great place to start, especially because it being short stories. You don't have to sign up for reading a 1,000-page book like It or The Stand. You can jump in bite-sized little chunks. And the longest story in here is probably like 30 or 40 pages. So it's a good one. It continues the theme of the vlog this week about books. So yeah, those are my top 5 favorite short stories out of Night Shift. So what did you think, Brian? Do you like short stories? Have you read any collections of short stories like this, or has it only been longer, like one full manga? I mean, manga and comic books are sort of like mini stories pieced together, but it's all still one narrative arc, whereas these are different stories that don't match each other. So I don't know if you've ever read any collections of short stories like that. But if you have, I'd love to hear about them. I look forward to seeing your vlog this weekend and seeing you this weekend because it's Mom's birthday. Happy birthday, Mom. And I hope you have a great night. See you later.